Hello, everyone. In 2021, we have a special guest, organist, also harpsichord player, wonderful composer from Belgium, and Professor Jan van Landeghem, who will join us today for a quarantine, New York Dance Innovation Quarantine talk. He will share with us about the situation, current situation in Belgium for the last year, about the teaching situation, also about the music activities in Belgium with the orchestras, with the ensembles, choirs. And he was also our special guest for the jury for the last year competition New Vision for the saxophone part. Professor Jan van Landeghem studied organ, studied also the harpsichord and composition, also with the famous Carl in Belgium. But he was also a Fulbright scholar, and he was also teaching, and he at the Georgia State University in Atlanta, so here in the States. And also was lecturing in Poland and many different countries in Europe and also outside of Europe. And he composed a lot of different works for orchestra, for chamber works, also with the choir, and especially also a lot for the organ because he's a performer. And I also want to mention, we'll talk today about his special duo with his wife, duo Landini, for the 5-string viola, which is an uncommon instrument. So he has instrument, he will also share with us. So first of all, thank you very much for being with us, Professor Jan, and nice to see you.
Well, nice to see you, Jakub. It's glad to see you again. I remember the nice period we had together, you in my class,
yes,
in the composition class, as one of the famous students in the time. And I'm very glad to see you back and to talk with you again.
Thank you, Professor. Yes, I also had, I have to mention, I had a wonderful, it was just one semester because I was exchange student. I was studying this time in Krakow, and I was your student as exchange of the Socrates Erasmus program. And I remember I had a beautiful time in Brussels when I was in your class. Also, I studied orchestration or composition. It was only one semester, but I had a great memories. And actually, unfortunately, I haven't been to Belgium since then. So I think there are many things has changed. It's been more than 10 years almost.
Yes. Yeah, Belgium is modernized a little bit. But, you know, we are a very crowded country. It's a lot of people living in a small area. We have 11 million people living in an area that is smaller than an American state. So sometimes it's a little bit crowded, you know.
And but a lot of tourists, I remember.
I show you the landscape now.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. That's beautiful. Great.
Yeah.
Covered by snow.
You see the river and you see the snow. So
I do. We do know we are gathering here to talk also first about the difficult situation for the artists all around the world, teachers for the last year. So if you can share a little bit about your experience as a professor, maybe first as a professor in Belgium, how is it and how was it? Can you tell a little bit about the pandemic situation there?
Yes. Well, first of all, we had 2 lockdowns. So the first lockdown was very severe. It was not allowed to leave the house, and all the restaurants, all the cafes, everything was closed. Every shop, all the shops that are not necessary to feed yourself were closed. So that was a very difficult situation. And a lot of people got in trouble also psychologically, you know. But for the teaching, I'm now teaching at an international school in Waterloo, as you know. And in Brussels, it's close to Brussels, you know, where Napoleon lost the big battle.
I was there.
Yeah, great. Okay. So I must say that we had to teach 1 entire month on Zoom. So like you and me are talking now, I had to teach the pupils who are internationally spread: China, Poland, Hong Kong, Holland, Germany, France, everywhere in Europe. We had a lot of Zoom meetings, and you know, with young people, it's sometimes very difficult in semi-collective classes to give analysis and to follow them and so on. It was not so easy.
Professor, which month was that? That was March or April?
This was the month of November last year. No, October.
October. So pretty recent.
Yes. So because the first lockdown was actually started in April. And this was very severe period. The second lockdown, we had to teach on Zoom. Yes.
Okay.
So
the first one, did you teach in person? The first lockdown?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's new. That's very new for us to hear that. Wow.
Yeah, we could continue. But this is because in Waterloo, there's a private school. And the private school decides itself what it does. And there's also a bubble. It's 50 children from the whole world. And they are having really a special regime. It's very individual. They have chamber music. They all compose. It's a Cambridge school. It's all in English. And, you know, it's for very gifted children. So yeah, if you want to see on YouTube Musica Mundi, you go to Musica Mundi concert live, then you can see those children playing. The children of 17 years are playing Rachmaninoff concertos and so on.
That's amazing.
As you know, I was there to study as a director in Bornem here of the Academy School of 1,500 pupils, arts and theater and also music and dance. And then in Brussels, I was 40 years professor, as you know. So, but now I retired, and they still ask me in my retirement to teach at this international school because they wanted a teacher with experience, you know. And I must say those children are really great because the most of them are composing, not only tonal, but also modal, also in Bartok style. They also want to try out the 12-tone system sometimes and everything, you know. They are so interested and motivated.
But that's wonderful what you are saying now, because this is uncommon, very uncommon also in Poland, in my tradition, that we learn composition in high school, because education is we learn instruments and very difficult to find composers to teach in high school. But that's different approach, and that's very different because they are very young and they already start composing and they have teachers. That's unusual. The same in the States.
Yeah, it's unique. You know, very unique. We have those schools for very gifted children. It's a boarding school, so everybody is actually staying there. All Chinese children and everyone. Yeah, but you know, there are now children from 18 years doing entrance examinations for Curtis Institute, for example.
In Philadelphia, yes.
Yeah, or for Juilliard School and so on. You know, the high Harvard University and so on.
Wonderful,
so
wonderful.
Yes, or the Royal College in London or whatever.
But are you now also teaching at the Royal Conservatory in Belgium, or you do have some class students or classes currently?
No, I retired.
You retire! Oh, congratulations! Yeah. I didn't know that, so congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I'm 65, so I retired.
Oh, I see.
We have to in Belgium.
As a performer or as an experienced player, and also because also you play a lot of organs, so many concerts in your life. So, but did you have students on the organs also at the?
Yes, I had not in Brussels, but here in Bornem. I taught myself maybe. I think I taught 15 years here and 10 years in Sydney class. So I had experience of 25 years teaching organ also. But we gave 2 concerts in lockdown. One in Eindhoven in Holland. You know, it was a church of 800 people, and they were with 200 people sitting with 2 chairs intermediate, you know. And then we played organ and violin. Jenny played also down on the hotel, and then we played together with the organ above, you know, on the jubé, like we say in French. So we gave 2 concerts, also one in Antwerp, in a modern church, also for 200 people, you know, all with mouth masks and everything. And I must say this was very impressive because those people during months, during a half year, did not have the occasion to have live concerts anymore. And they came for the first time in a half year. Those people, we played not too difficult program, also 2 of my compositions. One I wrote specially for that occasion. So it's called Corona Aria, Coronaire in French.
So during this pandemic, you wrote this piece?
Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So it's a piece in which you could feel anxious feelings and sad feelings, and also a kind of, you know, introvert and introspection. Because I think this period can learn also something to humanity, you know, that we are actually very lucky people when we are not having a virus, but most of the people don't realize it.
That's right. That's right.
First of all. Secondly, also personal, when we have a relationship, friends, and we don't see them anymore, we realize what they mean for us. What are real friends? What are real soulmates, I call it, you know, because you can feel each other. So also from large distance, it's not anymore, it has no link with space and time. friendship is so-called eternal for me. And also it's a question of souls, soul frequency. If you come together, if your frequencies are fitting, then you stay friends for the rest of your life, and maybe after that also probably. And in the next life also, because I believe in reincarnation, but that's personal. We had 20,000, more than 20,000 people died.
A lot for the
on
size
11,
of culture. Yes.
And on 11 million, it's a lot. You know, there was a period that we were the worst pupil of Europe. Now we are the best pupil of Europe. That means the government was very strict for the lockdowns, and now it's bringing results. And we have also the vaccines.
In Belgium, because you mentioned also your commissions and also the orchestras. So everything is on hold in Belgium. All the time is on hold, right now?
Yes, yes. There are no live concerts with orchestras. Not also pop festivals. It's all disappeared now. No pop festivals till the government decides the other way around. There are concerts like on Zoom and on video and on YouTube and so on. And you can pay 10 euros or whatever. You can give a contribution and you get the link and you can listen to the concert. So also for jazz, they did it, and for pop music and for classical music. We have even a television station which is specialized in those things: dance, music, theater, and also classical music and contemporary music and new compositions. It's all on the new channel.
The news I heard recently about the Bozar, which was a very great, I attended so many concerts there when I was a student.
Yes.
And it was, of course, there were no concerts recently for the last few months, but it was on fire, right? So
yes, it's already the second time. Actually it's the third time. So there was an historical organ. It was totally burned out in the 60s. They put a small organ from the Dutch organ builder Vlanthrop. And I went as a young guy, 19, 20 years, I went to the small organ concerts with Richter, who played Bach and so on. I still remember, I see it and I hear it in front of me. So, but this was very long ago. Now, 10 years ago, they restored the organ because this old situation was also new, organ of Westenfelder from Luxembourg, a new organ. And after 2 years, during the building of the organ, it was destroyed again with a fire. The water came, the water damage was enormous. So they had to rebuild a new instrument. And now it's the third time that this new organ is again damaged. So actually, as a matter of fact, I have a commission for this organ to write an organ concerto. Yes. Which will be performed in Bozar, but now it's postponed.
Of course, and also the instrument is damaged.
Yes, they can't perform it. So it's a nice place with one of the best acoustics of the world. And it was built, or the architect was Van der Velde. It was a Art Nouveau architect. If you remember the form, the special form and the special decoration.
Yes, I remember.
Yes, the years 30, 40, 50 of the 20th century. It's a famous hall. The Queen Elizabeth competition normally takes place there. And we have great concerts with great soloists from the whole world. But I have an alternative concert hall in Brussels, which they are now arranging for concerts as soon as it's possible.
I remember when we had the lesson, you mentioned a lot also about Frank, that he composed most of his best works when he was older. Great organist, right?
Yes.
So also, is the organ tradition popular in Belgium? Is it a popular instrument?
Yeah, I think so. Because we have a lot of Renaissance traditions.
Oh, yes.
We have the Flemish polyphonists. And the Flemish polyphonists, they wrote a lot of vocal music and polyphony according to the counterpoint rules of Gabrieli, who came actually from Adrian Willard, Palestrina, and all those people. Actually, those rules, how to write chords and triads, how to connect triads, in this quite more homophonic style, because the polyphony was in the Gothic too much trouble that the people could not understand the text anymore. So there came a new style according to the Catholic religion, and they invented then the Renaissance style. And we had choir schools. That means in the time, every cathedral, Brussels, Bruges, Antwerp, Kent, and so on, Liège, they had cathedrals and they organized cathedral schools. Cathedral schools, that means poor guys, poor boys from 8 years old that had a good voice, but did not have enough to eat, were actually allowed to do those schools. They learned to sing, they learned to play instruments, the organ and the keyboard. Probably they learned harpsichord and clavichord, and they also learned to compose according to those rules of the Flemish polyphonist. So we had generations of good polyphonic composers who were spread out, as well as our organ builders, in Europe. So this Renaissance tradition came from us in whole Europe.
So because when you came to the States, you were conducting and you were also teaching analysis of the Bach music. So the polyphonic music. So
it was in 1985.
85.
And you know, we had some great people in Flanders. They still perform. Jos van Immerseel and also Philippe Herwegen and some great conductors and players, especially Jos van Immerseel, analyzed and wrote articles together with a Dutch organist for the radio, NOS, Dutch radio. And also they did it for the Flemish radio. And he wrote a book to make music as Brugman. Now, who was Brugman? Brugman was a great theoretician, and he actually studied rhetorics. He studied Rhetorica from the Greek, the Old Greek, and how in the Renaissance and the Baroque composers adapted those techniques of speech in music and composition. So actually, what Bach had in his library were also the books of Quintilianus. And Quintilianus, he made actually the whole rules to write a speech. Now, if you follow those rules, you have to, if you give a speech, you give first, today you gave a little introduction. So we call this narratio. And then you have your main topic. And then you have, you give information about your main topic. And then you give the confutatios, which is actually arguments against what is negative, what is positive, what is negative. Again, confirmation, confutatio. So confirmatio, confutatio, you can make this very long. Actually, and then you make a conclusio, which is the peroratio. So the whole sonata form, for example, in the classical period, came from rhetorical forms.
Of course, yeah.
And this is very interesting because I analyzed a lot of works in the States. Actually,
also Matheson, do you know Matheson of the Rhetorics?
Matheson,
very nice also book, yes, very good.
This was actually the friend of Buxtehude, who was talking about the symbolism of the keys and all those things. And we look how he worked. I studied, I had the opportunity to analyze Bach during 1 year, every day. All kinds
in
of
Georgia?
work.
In Georgia?
In Georgia.
In Georgia.
Every day. And I was selected on basics of that because I got the information from the great musicians here and from the radio and the books also. So I was very good documented. And I studied it myself, like, you know, a university student is doing a doctorate or whatever, which I also did. Yes, research. So this research, I learned so much that for me, it was actually a composition school because I knew how Bach composed. I saw by analyzing his compositions, his arias from the Passions, his motets, his organ works. How did he compose? What was the concept of his composition technique? And what I learned also is that when you compose, it's not important what style you write. The most important is the quality of your defense. How do you defend your material? How do you actually believe in your material and you work it out? And then you also have to take care of a few rules. You have to be clear in your introduction. You have to be clear in your main idea. You have to be clear in your contrasting ideas. Contrasting idea, very important. So the confirmatio, confutatio idea. You have also in the good rhetoric, surprise. What is a surprise? If you give, with Christmas, you get a present. And you open the present and then, wow, sometimes it's a great surprise. Sometimes you say,
right.
Okay, he's giving every year the same thing. I don't care anymore. I know what is in the back. I don't even open it. So this is a good surprise in a composition. It's important. I think the rhetoric can learn us about how to construct music and how to conceive in any style. Composers of tonal music, repetitive music, or whatever, can also be very creative. And you can everywhere include surprises. And I wrote an important article, which I published in Poland, your country.
My country.
But I took for the contemporary examples a string quartet by Wolfgang Riem.
Riem, yes, German composer.
I think his third or his fourth string quartet. And I took passages and I illustrated it with composition because I know he was also using Bach rhetoric rules to compose himself new music.
But I have a question now also about your music, because I remember your music has a lot of inspirations. I remember we talked also about African music when I started with you.
Yes.
You introduced me this wonderful book. I remember about Ligeti, about the rhythms. And yes. I remember we also talk a lot about the different spiritual words. I remember you were writing a piece about the Mayans, this time Mayans, ancient Mayans calendar. But you have also a lot of, because you have a lot of influences, this sacral music, religious music. Yes, you wrote a lot of pieces for the organ churches. And I have also a question for you, also regarding your music, about your primary forces.
Well, you know, of course, we have been influenced by modernism. So Karel Ruvaerts, one of my professors, as you know, a teacher, he also was one of the first people that worked together with Stockhausen. And he was actually, after the war, he was also in the class of Messiaen. Messiaen had a great analysis class in Paris Conservatory.
Of course.
You know, in the 40s and the 50s. Yes. After the Second World War, he continued. And there was also Boulez in his class. There was also Tondelay from Holland. There was also, of course, Karel Ruvaerts, Stockhausen, and other people. Also, the Japanese composer Takemitsu. So I think we have, first of all, because your question was a little bit broad. So the first thing is spirituality. I think we as composers and me as organist, we are grown up Catholic. Okay, good. But then as organists, we are also playing in other churches. We are playing everywhere in the world. We are coming in contact with Buddhism. We are coming in contact. I was teaching and also playing concerts during a number of years in Japan. Made two tours of 10 to 17 concerts.
On the organs? On the organs or harpsichord?
Both, organ and harpsichord, with soprano and the trumpet also. The trio Allarmi, which is on Spotify.
Your trio, you played in this trio, right?
Yes, during 10 years. And so we actually, if the world realize that there are so many things common in all religions, and that there is so much to learn from each other, that we have to respect each other's cultures, because a multicultural society is a reality. We live in one city. We click on the button and we are speaking from other countries and so on. So I tried with my works also to include Buddhist languages, Japanese modes. I tried to include Carnatic rhythm from India, which you did not follow in my course because I did not teach it at that time. But now there are very interesting books about Carnatic rhythms. And you find on YouTube a lot of movies about it. So it's from South India. Messiaen was teaching about North India in his book, Technique de mon langage musical. But you know what now we are teaching is South India. And you have also not only polyrhythm, but polypulse. That means, the percussion players know a lot of it. That means that in one bar, you have more than one pulse. For example, in a bar of 4/4, 1, 2, 3, 4, you have 4 16ths on every beat. So it's 16 16ths. But you also have 7 plus 9 is 16.
Subdivisions, so, different subdivisions.
Yes, so we have pulses, we call the subdivisions, they form groups.
Yes.
And you create other accents within this bar. So African music is 1, 2, 3, 4, taram pam pam param pam 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 param pam pam param pam 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 param. So this is actually a pulse, 7 plus 9, in a 4/4 environment. Also, the tango is already doing this. Tango is 8/8 plus 4/4. There is the layer of 3 plus 3 plus 2, and there is the layer of 4/4. You understand?
I was not, yes.
So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So this is a very interesting. There is a lot of dance music, from the past, which includes already a polypulse. And then we have also the Chinese heterophony. We had in Flanders festivals, Chinese orchestras coming. They are playing all the same melody. They are playing all the same melody, but they play it in a different way, and they play different variations.
And different ornamentations. That's also very interesting.
Exactly.
And you have ornamentation. That's the most interesting part for me.
Yes, for me too.
Yes.
Because then you have heterophony. The chords are the result of the ornaments. And the chords are not the reason for the melody. Mozart is you take a chord and you make your melody out of the chord. But in heterophony, you have the melody that makes ornamentation, and the ornamentation gives a special vertical construction.
And sometimes little harmonies, right? That's right.
Exactly. So this kind of approach is enriching. The multicultural society, it is an opportunity to enrich our language and to also commit respect to other cultures.
I agree. That's why also I came to the States, you know. That was also one of the reasons why I came, because of the meeting so many cultures. There are so many things I don't know. I know that there are so many things, but it's always showing me a lot of inspiration, and also how many things can be thought in a different way. But Professor, because also about the Belgian tradition and Belgian music, do you feel that you connect somehow, your root is always have something specific Belgium, maybe the polyphony, right? Or what in your music?
Yeah, I think we were grown up with polyphony. I was conductor during a number of years. I studied also choir conducting and orchestra conducting. And I conducted my own works. That's what I love. But I also conducted because I was organist in church from my 12 till my 42. So I was 30 years also in churches active.
Like Messi, all his life in the church.
Yes. So I had to improvise in church as a child already. You know, we just enjoyed to improvise on Gregorian chant or on chorales or whatever, you know, this kind of style. But Gregorian chant is actually something very rich also. In Gregorian chant, we have the modes, but we have also the semiology of Gregorian music. It is not a system in which you write every note down. It's actually, it was with lines, and there were a few points, a few dots, and then they wrote down the movements of the conductor, which was actually the interpretation of the Gregorian chant, which we call semiology. And I studied in Holland, in Maastricht, with a specialist in old Gregorian notation. I studied a few years also this technique. And this is very interesting to in the organization of phrasing, how to organize your phrasing in a composition. It's very important. Is melody necessary? No. But if you organize melody, you have opportunities, and you can enrich your language also with Gregorian music. There's the technique of Gregorian music. So you see, one of my sources of inspiration is the very old religious Gregorian chant. Then we have also afterwards the polyphony. I conducted a lot of polyphony. I had a boys' choir during 15 years. I had 10 years as organist, accompanist, and 5 years as conductor.
But I want to ask you, because I'm a music director of the Chopin&Friends Festival, so we start from the Chopin and this tradition also. But I also have a question for you, personal question, because do you think, because Chopin, of course, wrote only mostly for piano, well, that's all just some tiny pieces with songs and maybe with orchestra. But do you think, as his way of composition, we can still find in the 21st century inspirations in the music of Chopin? What do you think?
Yeah. I think the great quality of Chopin is the incredible melody building in combination with the original harmony modulations. So, of course, they were very modern. And when we study sometimes the Beethoven was in his third opus 1 he published, was 3 string trios, violin, cello, piano. Opus 1, number 3, is a great composition. It's the first work he published. And in that work, he applied modulation technique. Modulation technique that was very, very modern for the time. And Chopin, he studied also and analyzed this work. And I think he knew perfectly what Beethoven did. And Chopin integrated this kind of modulations. For example, taking the augmented 6th chord, and which is normally leading to the dominant. But the second time he uses it, he is considering an enharmonic as dominant of D flat major, which is half step higher. Our coming back from D flat major in 6th chord is actually Neapolitan sixth in C major. So this kind of augmented sixth chord in C minor.
Of course.
And then these techniques, you know, they are very, very special. And Chopin goes further. But then we have the ornamentation technique from Chopin and the melody form.
My favorite, ornamentation also, yes. Which is so unique for Europe,
Yes. Yeah, what we are telling about the ornamentation, the ornamentation in Chopin, for example, you take the Nocturne and B flat minor number 1.
Even first
Si,
one.
do, re, la, si, sol, fa, fa, and so on. So the second time he uses it, it's already an extension. And the third time, it's a greater extension. So we call this anaphoras. And the anaphora is a repetition. But if you extend things with more notes and shorter notes and great ornamentation, then we call it paranomasia. So it's a classical technique. Anaphora, repetition, and then the third time adding things, or even the second time. In this Nocturne, it's a fantastic example. I always play this for my pupils. Say, listen to this. What is happening? Can you do this with your work too? You repeat something, but do something with it. Sometimes. But
I give the second movement of the F minor concerto because those are so many, those ornaments.
Oh, yes. Great. I think that's great respect for the tradition, because they also knew the tradition. And they have the tradition from their time, and we can learn from those traditions, and we can learn from our contemporaries. So every composer who is now living can study incredible styles, knowledge of style. He can study the old music, can study new music, can study romantic music. We have the world is a village, so we can study geographically other cultures, and we study in the history. So it's an incredible richness. It's a never-ending story of enriching our language. And every work that we study it's an opportunity to look into the soul of the composers, and to the inspiration, and to the source. The source is actually linked to the soul. We all have a personal language because we have a soul expression. But we are also actually connected to the soul of other composers when we study them. That was also your question. Yes. You look not only in their scores, but also in their souls. And soul is also a matter of emotion. What kind of experiences did they have in life? With love stories, with parents dead, and with children, and somebody died, and so on. So there are so many stories about Bach had 21 children, but only 13 survived. You know, he did not write in C major when one of his children died. He wrote touching passages and arias, you know.
Yes. But, you know, let's make a surprise for this at the end of our conversation, okay, yes, about the string tradition, because I mentioned you had this duo Landini. Yes. And you perform with your wife, but yes, on the unusual instrument of the 5-string viola. So people probably have never seen this instrument. Also, what a beautiful shape it has.
Yes,
wonderful. Can you tell about the instrument?
Yes. The head is, first of all, I tell my wife is violinist, but she wanted also her life play the viola. And she plays both. And then we are in contact with a lot of violin makers. And I was dreaming from a piece for 5-string viola, because I think the canton in tradition was originally built for bad viola players that could not play the high positions. There are a lot of jokes about viola players.
Yes.
So, but this is actually a very special instrument, because you see, you can reach higher than the violin because of this fingerboard situation, and you can go as low as the low C of the viola. So we have those.
It's almost C. It's almost C, I think, right?
Yeah.
Almost.
So it needs to be retuned.
A little
but
bit.
Anyway, you see the head of the viola here. Here it is a girl, and here it is a boy. It's hermaphrodite.
Oh, hermaphrodite.
Yeah.
So who had this idea?
That was my idea, because I wanted as composer, I wrote my guitar concerto in the 90s. It was performed a lot in Flanders and some performances abroad also. It needs to be recorded now. And this experience with guitar, with the 6 strings, invited me to think about why is it not possible we have the viola pomposa and we have what Bach is using in the Passion. Is it now so difficult to make a violin or a viola with 5 strings? So then we first asked to create a violin with 5 strings, but that was not very successful because the low string was too short. We made it thicker, but it was not actually giving the volume that we needed. Mm-hmm. So we asked them to make a 5-string viola.
How many instruments do we have in the world like that? And who built this instrument?
This is a unique instrument because it's built by a Flemish violin maker, Luc de Nijs.
So tell me, maybe because we had this competition also with the saxophone, also with the because it's a long tradition also in Belgium with the saxophones, with ensembles. But you also wrote many pieces with the saxophones, and maybe we'll also listen one of this work that you composed. So can you tell maybe about maybe let's talk maybe about the trio that you composed for the Kugoni trio. Yeah.
So I wrote already 3 works for Kugoni trio, some lighter pieces and a serious work. So this piece is called Ling Yo Chi Chi Chi. Mm-hmm. And Ling Yo Chi Chi Chi, that's Chinese numbers. And you have Yi, San, R, and so on. You are saying that's 1, 2, 3 in Chinese. But I studied a little bit Dao philosophy. I don't know if you know what is Dao.
Yes,
Dao is coming from Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu lived 2,500 years ago in China, and he was a kind of philosopher. You see Dao calligraphy at my wall there. You see it?
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. You see? So this is actually, it's not only an art piece, a piece of art made in one movement, but it's also energetic and philosophic. So it has 3 qualities: art, energy, and philosophy. This piece for the trio is linked to the Dao philosophy. Ling Yo Chi Chi Chi. It means there is corpus callosum in the brain, and you have 2 parts in your brain. And the problem is with a lot of people that they are not connected. A lot of people are not able to connect the left brain with the right brain. And the musicians, they train apart because the motorical piano playing, organ playing, and instrumental playing, it's an advantage because we train a lot of energies and connections from left to right through the corpus callosum. And the corpus callosum is in the middle of your head. It's actually a kind of highway of neuron traffic. And if this highway is very well maintained, we have speed of traffic, which is much bigger than a normal speed of a little bike or whatever. You understand what I mean? So now spirituality and Dao philosophy are also linked because Dao Sheng Yi, Sheng R, that's for example, Dao reverse creation. Dao reverse creation is you go to the source and you come back from the source to earth. So it's actually going to the beginning of the creation when there were no dimensions. And this piece of saxophone, flute, violin, and piano is stimulating the numbers of this triggers, you know. And normally, if you finish to listen to it, you should be twice more intelligent. No,
I should listen a lot every day in the morning. I will.
It's a little joke, but that's, you know, there is a whole philosophy behind.
So the second movement of the trio is actually is in memory of the victims of. Maybe you can tell about this, Professor.
Yes. Well, the point is, I was writing this commission for the Cogoni Trio when the attacks in Paris just passed. So there were a lot of victims, you remember. I don't know the number of deaths anymore, but it was a terrible situation. Yes, everybody was in the world shocked. They attacked dancing, and they were shooting people, you know, like flies. They died. And a lot of traumatized people also in the world by seeing and hearing this, what happened. It's every attack can be dreadful, but this one was really a disaster, an incredible disaster, and anxious feeling for everybody in the world. So I was just starting the second movement. And what I do is this anxious feeling I created by letting the saxophone play a multiphonic. And on this multiphonic, I do a harmonic of the violin. And at the same time, I let play a harmonic in the violin in the piano. So the pianist is touching a string and doing repetitive things on it. So this is kind of, yeah, the repetitions, percussion repetitive. And then during those, you don't know what you hear. It's kind of electronic music. It's kind of wind coming from I don't know where. And then it goes over into that melody coming from the Chinese numbers, Ling Yo Chi Chi Chi, 2/7 and so on. And so I make my melody, and then all those timbres are coming. And from those timbres, from those melodies, I take some chords, and then the timbres become chords, and the chords they develop. And the final is a quotation of, it was a question also of the ensemble, of one of the seasonings from Vivaldi. Yeah, so it's going and there is also a very turbulent fight. You know, the shots are imitated and tuk 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 in the piano. So this movement is touching. You know, it's if you know the content, you immediately feel the atmosphere of the time that it passed away. Yeah.
We'll listen for this Chinese New Year. This your trio that we've just discussed. And of course, Professor, I thank you very much for being the jury of this year of this competition for the saxophone and all of sharing everything.
Pleasure. Yes.
And Happy New Year, Chinese New Year for you and for your wife.